MacVoices is supported by ExpressVPN. Secure your surfing at expressvpn.com/MacVoices. Welcome to MacVoices. This is the talk of the Apple community, and I'm Chuck Joyner. Folks, it's been a while since we did one of our 5-question shows, and it's about time we got that format back on track. And I couldn't think of a better guy to do it with than my guest, because I've wanted to ask him a bunch of questions because I hear him regularly on different on some of his shows, and I want to ask follow-up questions. So this is my chance. My guest, of course, is Mr. John Martellaro of the Mac Observer. John, it's great to see you. Thanks for being here.
Nice to be here. Thanks for inviting me. It's always a pleasure.
And thank you for submitting yourself to what you have no idea what.
Well, we'll see how it goes.
Well, I haven't lost anybody yet, John, so that's the good news. So the way this works is I've got 5 questions for you that we'll get to in a second, but the first one really doesn't count. I always like to get a little bit of groundwork in and find out what kind of Apple hardware setup do you have? What does your typical setup look like?
Well, I'm talking to you with a 2013 Mac Pro, which I could not get my hands on until the spring of 14. So it's about 5 years old. It's been humming along beautifully. It's this graceful, beautiful little black cylinder that I love. It sits behind my Hewlett-Packard 34-inch Z34C display, which is a vertical alignment, not a what is it? IPS in plane switching. Yeah. So it works beautifully, and it gives me lots of room on my desktop. I have multiple desktops. In addition to one 34-inch, I have a second desktop where I put other stuff. So I have got lots of room. Unlike Jeff Gammon and Kelly, I hate overlapping windows. I did this in Lockheed Martin with my Sun workstation. I always had windows in their place and not overlapping, and it worked out. It's just sort of a habit of mine. So it's only got 16 gig of RAM. It's the baseline quad core 3.7 gigahertz Mac Pro from 2013. And, there's been a lot of criticism of it. But for me, as a writer who likes to have my own display connected, rather than be stuck with a built-in 27-inch, say, on an iMac, it gives me great freedom to connect anything I want. I used to have 2 displays connected, and then when I got this invitation from Hewlett-Packard to review the 34C, I just fell in love with it, and I kept it. So that's basically my setup.
Any iPads or MacBooks in the picture for you?
Well, sitting next to me is a iPhone XS Max, which I love. I bought it as soon as it came out. And as time has gone on, I've been happier and happier with bigger displays on my iPhones. That's not common. I know a lot of people like small phones. They don't like what they call aircraft carrier size of the XS Max, but I think it's great, especially with older eyes, and it just blows everything up beautifully. It's great for reading at web pages and Google Maps and whatnot. So I'm in love with my XS Max. It's great. On my other side of me is a 12.9-inch 2015 iPad Pro, which I've seen no reason to replace yet. My wife has a newer 10.5-inch iPad Pro, so she's leapfrogged me. But my 12.9-inch from 2015 does everything I needed to do. And in fact, the iPhone XS Max is so big that there's lots of times when I pick it up instead of the monster 12.9-inch, because when I'm using a second screen watching TV and I want to look up something on IMDb or something like that, the XS Max in my hand is just perfect for that stuff. So that's how I'm set up.
AirPods, HomePod, any of those?
AirPods was never a solution to a problem I had. I'm an over-the-ear headphone kind of guy, and I just never got into the AirPods. They were expensive and hard to get, and I found out I could live without them. So there's really no need for it. The same thing with the HomePod. I've got lots of speakers. got a home theater set up. I've got speakers in my office on every computer. I've got my playlist. I've got iTunes set up on a special Mac. I just never thought that the compromise HomePod being not as good as Alexa and being monophonic, if you only buy one of them, wasn't a solution to any problem I had either. So that's not consistent with me. I usually buy Apple products, and I'm going to buy Apple TVs, whatever they call it, the content system, because I can't wait to watch what Apple's doing with their TV, original TV content. But some people are calling that Apple Prime, like Amazon Prime. I kind of like that phrase. So I've been calling it Apple Prime. I'll sign up for that. I can't wait to see, because I'm a big Netflix and Amazon Prime viewer. I have lots of favorite shows. I'm catching up right now. I'm watching Star Trek Discovery, season 1. That's good television. Although sometimes the writing makes me cringe a little bit in places. But I decided not to sign up for CBS All Access when it came out because I didn't feel like I wanted to be strong-armed into it. And I knew it was going to come out later. And I had so many other things to watch on Netflix, like Jessica Jones and other shows that were chewing up my time, Saving Hope, stuff like that, I figured, well, eventually it's going to come to iTunes. And it did. And so I'm watching it. So it's not normal for me to bypass Apple products. I usually get excited and eager to get my hands on them, but so there's something about the AirPods hanging out of my ears that just wasn't my thing.
Hey, nothing wrong with that.
Yeah.
They're hanging out of my ears right now.
I can see that.
They serve a purpose, and that's that they are some of my favorite headphones. Unlike you, I'm an over-the-ear guy if I really want to listen to music, but for the convenience and the ability to move around and all, these have been awfully good. So
yeah, well, maybe I'll get a pair someday.
Yeah, when the black ones come out, maybe
AirPod 2.
Yeah, whatever. Yeah, that's the rumor, of course.
Yeah.
Okay, so that gives us an idea of where you are and kind of what you have at your command. So here's question number 1. You do quite a bit of writing for the Mac Observer. You obviously prepare a lot for Background Mode, your podcast.
Yeah.
The particle debris articles that you come up with, I think, are really interesting because they pull together a lot of bits and pieces and esoteric things. So the question is this: what apps do you spend most of your day in? Do you spend it in browsers? Do you spend it in writing apps? What are the tools of your trade?
Well, let's see. Just before we started recording, I quit all my apps so I wouldn't have any conflicts. But as we said before, I tried on this beautiful 34-inch display, I tried not to have any overlapping. Of course, I live in Safari. I use Safari because I dropped Firefox a while back when Firefox stopped supporting Web of Trust for technical reasons. So I depend on Web of Trust to help me avoid undesirable websites. If I look for the green circle, make sure it's safe to go there. So I live in Safari. I live in Apple Mail. I live in Twitterific, which I have open simultaneously. I have Slack open because that's where the Mac Observer team lives. That's our sort of home base. So that's pretty much my communications. Messaging, open as needed. I'm not like Jeff Gamet. I'm not constantly messaging. But I do use message for an interesting purpose. When I am in the recliner or somewhere else in the house or with my phone or my iPad and I see an article I like, I share it by messages. And it shows up in my message app on the Mac, which I then drag to the particle debris folder. So it's a web location document. Some people do something more exotic with other apps. but I have found it very convenient to use web location files. And that's how I populate my particle debris folder. And then on Friday, I step through them and I look and I use Pathfinder as my principal finder. I don't use the Apple Finder very much at all. I've been using Pathfinder since it came out in maybe 2005 or something like that. I just like the environment that Pathfinder creates for me. It's a really great app. And so I can step through my particle debris folder, click on a link, a preview window open underneath so I can see everything about it, and it reminds me of the name of the article and the link to it. So then I just double click on a web location file and start stepping through and loading up tabs in Safari and kind of get a feel for if there's any commonality or if there's any common theme. And then I start writing in BBEdit, which is my go-to text editor. Even though we use WordPress, I compose offline and do HTML markup with Text Expander. So Text Expander gives me my HTML markups, my BBEdit articles, and then I just drop it into WordPress at the Mac Observer. And so what I do is I'll read an article and I'll comment on it and create a text block in BBEdit. Then I'll go on to the next article, and if it's related, I'll tie them together. If it's really exciting, I'll make it the theme piece, the particle debris article of the week. And then I'll continue through until I'm done and I run out of space. And I've commented on all the articles I want for particle debris that Friday. It's a lot of fun.
I want to make sure I understand the messaging workflow. So what do you message it to yourself? Is that?
Yeah, I'll be. Sometimes I get into the recliner with my iPad 12.9 inch, and I'll read an article in Flipboard, and then I'll share it to myself as a message, and really load up the messages. And then when I get back to my Mac and I'm ready to go to work, there in the Message app is a list of all the articles linked in the Messages app, and I just click on it, and it loads it up in Safari. And I'm ready to read it or do something with it or accept from it.
I can't
let unusual workflow. It suits me.
Yeah. And I can't let the one comment there slide by too much. You say you're reading a lot of articles on Flipboard. Are you using Flipboard to access Twitter or one of the social media sites, or do you have your own?
No, I have favorite Flipboard pages. Technical advances, artificial intelligence, robots, Apple, Mac Pro, MacBook Pro. I've got about 30 or 40 different Flipboard entry points, pages. I don't know what they're called. And I'll read through those during the week and collect articles that I think are of interest.
Yeah, I ask specifically because I really think Flipboard is an underappreciated resource. I publish MacVoices magazine on Flipboard as an aggregator.
Yeah,
the things that I think are really great, but it's one that I don't hear come up very often, and that's why I'm delighted to hear that you are a fan of it, because it's such a pleasant experience, especially on the iPad.
I probably get 60% of my articles from Flipboard, and then the other 40% come from Twitter. As I'm working out through the day and I'm writing, I have my Twitterific window exposed, and I can watch the timeline. And when I see something of interest flow by, I'll click on it, and it'll go load into Safari. And then if I like it, I'll save it to the particle debris folder as a web location file. And that's where I get a lot of stuff. When I first started with Twitter, I made it my point to follow every technical writer there is in the known universe. So I follow everyone. I've had a lot of, and that's led to having a lot of them on background mode, getting to know them, how they write, stuff like that.
I'm so glad to hear you say that too, because so many people seem to be they're bagging on Twitter pretty heavily that Twitter's dead or Twitter's dying and Twitter's useless and Twitter's just filled with hate. And I think it depends on who you follow and how you curate it. And if somebody gets out of line, then you just unfollow them. But for me, I'm with you. It's almost like a news ticker, because I'm trying to follow intelligent people that are making intelligent comments and not just talking about what they had for breakfast or their latest political outrage, whatever, regardless of which side of the aisle you're on. It's like, I don't have time for that, and I really don't care. I need information, and Twitter will deliver it if you follow the right people.
Yeah, that's what I do. Sturgeon's law applies here, of course. There's a lot of needless commentary, which I skip over, but I've sort of learned how to have an eye for my favorite authors and my favorite websites, Ars Technica and Box and Quartz and Macworld. I'm a big fan of Dan Moore, and I always keep track of what he's doing. He's been on background mode. He's great. And so I've kind of developed an eye for, skipping over stuff that's been retweeted and Sturgeon's law applies, or an important article by an author I know, which I'll instantly want to look at and see if it's a candidate for particle debris.
Okay, so question number 2, and
we got through that.
You got through that. But you also you led me to question number 2, and I had this one prepared. Okay. What is it with you and robots?
Well, I grew up in the heyday of science fiction, of Asimov, Clarke, Heinlein, Sturgeon, Bradbury, Zelazny. But my favorites were Asimov, Clarke, and Heinlein. And of course, you grew up with Isaac Asimov and robots and science fiction, Robert Heinlein and home automation, The Door into Summer, one of my favorite novels. You sort of get a fixation on the future of robots. And how that's going to play out and how that's going to work fascinates me. In the olden days, and say in the 60s and 70s, we saw robots as autonomous and very loyal to their masters, owners, and not very well connected to the rest of the universe. But the internet has brought on this meme where everything you do is tracked and watched and uploaded. And so now we have this specter of family service robots always connected to the mothership, like Alexa. And there doesn't seem to be any strong social or government regulation that's going to prevent robots from spying on you. I wrote a science fiction story when I was writing at Apple Links years ago about a family robot that was asked to go shopping, and it would come home with the grocery list of items. But the owner of the company sold out to some of the suppliers. And so you would ask the robot to go to the grocery store and come back with Dannon yogurt. And instead it brought home Yoplait, because it had been programmed to prefer Yoplait because the owner has struck a financial deal with that company. And this young co-partner of the company finds out what she's doing, and there's a big conflict. And so, I kind of see that as a concern about the evolution of robots. Robots are being designed to be friendly and have big eyes and not be physically imposing, because nobody wants a 300-kilogram piece of steel lumping around the house, shaking the furniture and terrorizing the kids. But in terms of the connectivity and surveillance aspect of a robot, that's still to be worked out. There's a wonderful movie called Robot and Frank, which I highly recommend everybody see. It's Frank Langella. He's a retired jewel thief, and he's living alone, and he needs some help because he's aged and his wife has passed away, and his son buys him a family service robot called Robot. And Frank perverts its purpose and teaches it how to be a thief. So it goes both ways. And of course, the thing that I've been beating on Apple about for maybe 5 years is if there's so much emphasis on artificial intelligence at Apple, and AI is the gateway to robotics, and Apple's working on autonomous ride-sharing cars, why aren't they working on family robots? Because everybody in the known universe is going to be trying to get a robot into your house. Curry failed and went out of business. I was almost ready to get a Curry for review, but the company suspended operations. That would have been cool. But one of these days I'll have a robot in the house and I'll start talking about it and writing about it. See how it goes.
Okay, so these are follow-up parts of the discussion, but
you're looking at me like, who is this guy?
No. I think it's intriguing because I go to CES and I see I'm going to categorize them as Japanese robots. The friendly little, they have little faces and they're round and chubby and big-eyed and all that.
Yeah.
So how do you define what in your mind a robot is, and what do you see by that definition a robot doing for you? I mean, we all have, well, no, we don't all have them, but you have the robot vacuums, like the Roombas. That do you consider that a robot? Is Alexa a robot, a software robot of some kind? How do you do the definition, and what do you want, or what do you see robots doing for you?
We're starting out, there's a problem. I had John Markoff on Background Mode a while back, and he's also written extensively about robots. And there's a big problem with family service robots right now. The cost and the expense of a robot that can function as a human being and bring in the groceries and mow the lawn and do dishes and move furniture around and vacuum and tough to get to places and prepare meals and pick up the house and do all sorts of household chores. That kind of robot, that kind of sophistication and strength and flexibility in an Android form, that's going to be enormously expensive beyond the finances of an average family. We're talking about hundreds of thousands of dollars for a robot like that. So that's a problem right now. And so the makers of robots have relegated themselves to 18-inch pieces of plastic that can hum and purr and talk to you and feel cozy with you and answer questions and have a video camera and record your life and do other interesting small scale things. But they don't have the agility. Even Sophia doesn't walk like a normal Boston Robotics robot. She wheels in. So we're very early in the technology in the stages right now. But the kind of robot that I foresee being helpful in the future is just exactly what I described a second ago. A robot that can do the heavy lifting, that can move some rocks around in your yard, do the gardening, or chase the deer away if they're eating your flowers, or feed the dog, or do dishes, things that require Android-like dexterity. In other words, C-3PO, not R2-D2.
Okay, so if that's the case, then is that human like design? Do you think that's important? Just because that's the way we know how to do dishes? We know how a human does dishes. So is that the best way to do it?
I think so. I think that it is closer to the human form the robot is, the more friendly appearing it will be and less threatening. You certainly don't want Terminator-like steel and red glowing lights and stainless steel teeth and lurching mechanical movements. We want something that's graceful and elegant. Something like Ex Machina. Have you seen Ex Machina?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, but you just mentioned Sophia, has to wheel in. I mean, I guess that's where I was going with it. Are the human limbs, do you think that's really that important? I mean, do you feel not intimidated, but do you think that's more approachable than something that? Because now here locally, I don't know if it's in your area, but we have the giant food store chain, and they now have a floor cleaning robot that is, probably 6.5, 7 feet tall, and it doesn't move very fast, but it moves, and it's very aware of its surroundings. And they've tried to make it friendly appearing so it doesn't scare the kids, and it is, but it's obviously not walking; it's rolling around.
Well, I'm thinking of a robot that can walk your kid to school when you're busy or at work and deflect bullies. If you have a robot that's wheeling along and having difficulty with the curbs and has a bad center of gravity, if your kid's being bullied, they'll just walk up to the robot and go, boink, push it over. It'll say, help me, I can't get up. You want a robot that has the agility and flexibility of a human so that it can protect itself and comply with Asimov's 3 laws.
Okay. So you really, you're looking for, lack of a better phrase, a servant kind of robot.
Yeah, like the movie I, Robot.
Right.
Yeah. Ultimately, now how soon that'll happen, when they become affordable to the average family, and whether we'll solve the internet hacking and spying and other issues remains to be seen. But I'm thinking 10, 15 years.
You really think that quick for something that sophisticated?
Yeah, they won't be affordable at first, but in 15 years, wealthy people will be able to buy servant robots.
Okay. So let's see. I'm calculating my age. At what age will I be able to buy?
Yeah, we'll be around to see it. Yeah.
Start saving my pennies now. This edition of MacVoices is supported by ExpressVPN, the easy to set up, easy to use VPN service that is #1 rated by TechRadar and has a 30-day money-back guarantee. I could stop there, but I won't. If you don't want to hand over your online browsing history to your internet provider, data resellers, or anyone else, you need a VPN. Even in the safety of your home, you are being tracked. That's why you see ads for that one item you looked at on one website 1 week ago pop up all over every other website you visit. The way around that is by using a VPN, which stands for Virtual Private Network. Don't understand that? No problem. ExpressVPN does, and just by turning it on, you are immediately safer and more secure. They anonymize and secure your browsing by both hiding your public IP address and encrypting your data. And ExpressVPN is affordable, less than $7 per month. Your privacy is worth $7 a month, right? Mine certainly is. But it gets better. If you visit expressvpn.com/MacVoices right now, you can get 3 months free by signing up for a 1-year package. Again, that's expressvpn.com/MacVoices for a total of 15 months when you sign up for a 1-year package. Take back your privacy with ExpressVPN. Thanks to ExpressVPN for their support of MacVoices. John, somehow I think you must be reading some of my notes here, because your answers to one question sort of overlap into the next question. So question number 3, with all of this, with everything you're talking about and everything we have now, do you think that the privacy, or even the expectation of privacy, is dead?
That's a really good question. I've been generally pessimistic about it because of the free reign the tech giants have had. For a long time, the government ignored them and let them just do their thing. But I think there's a sort of a internet spring arriving with the Facebook issues and Cambridge Analytica kind of blowing up on Facebook and government inspection. We talked the other day about a Facebook issue in which there were closed groups where people were discussing health issues with each other in what they thought was what was called a closed group and what they thought was a private group. And it turned out that there were lurkers infiltrating the groups and feeding information to insurance companies and other health companies about these people's health issues they thought they were discussing privately with each other. And Facebook turned around and blamed the users and said, no, you have no expectation of privacy. It's a public situation. You should never have made that assumption. So what we're going through right now is we're going through a sort of a combination of government regulation and new awareness by users about what Facebook is all about, what it's designed to do. And I think those two are happily happening at the same time. And I think that there's going to be more and more regulation that's going to clamp down on this kind of behavior by the tech giants, notably Facebook. Not one of my favorite companies. Can I say that on the air?
Sure. Sure. Right now, I feel like Facebook is almost a necessary evil because there's no question that for a certain class of user, and what I mean by that is largely a non-technical user. That's where you keep up with your friends from high school that are not geeks like you and me. I hate to say average, I hate to say common. That's not what I don't mean those in a disparaging way. They just aren't tech obsessed, maybe like we are, or quite as tech aware.
Yeah,
but everybody's on Facebook.
Yeah, so. But there's a cognitive issue. I've written about the Israeli psychologist, PhD and Nobel Prize winner Danny Kahneman, and he was one of the first, as I recall, I may be wrong, to point out a cognitive issue with people, and that is when people want something bad enough, they psychologically diminish the risks. And you see that in the behavior of people all the time. And so what Facebook does is it creates such an attractive environment, and people want it so badly, and it fulfills their needs so completely that they push the risks under the rug. And what we see from the outside observing them is they're not concerned about their privacy. And what they're doing mentally is they're suppressing the risk because there's something that Facebook's giving them. And as long as Facebook keeps giving them that psychological satisfaction and connectivity and importance with all the likes and everything, they will continue to suppress their concerns about privacy risk until it bites them. And it doesn't bite them in a very abrupt kind of way. It gets them in a very subtle kind of way, where suddenly their insurance rates go up, or their web browser page is full of ads for things that when they go, where'd that come from? So it's a subtle kind of risk. And those of us who grew up as physicists, like I did, and science fiction readers, maybe we're more alarmed or more attuned to the risks. But people who are new to computers and grew up with never knew a time when there wasn't a computer in the house and a phone in their hands, maybe they're not so skeptical or concerned.
Interesting point, because I too was an avid science fiction reader at a younger age, and the whole science fiction thing, of course, a lot of times is to take a premise and run it to the extreme, and yet there are times I feel like we're living in some of those novels today, and Facebook is as good an example as any, where it's being taken to an extreme, and you have to wonder, can it get under control? What will it take to get it under control? Other than Mark Zuckerberg appearing before Congress and saying, gee, I'm really sorry. We're learning. Well, okay, that went for a little while.
Just delegate my homework.
Yeah, and unfortunately, there's some things that have happened with Facebook and with others that were almost understandable. They weren't obviously part of the growing process and the learning process. But there are others that it just, okay, this was a conscious, I'm not ready to say malicious decision, but it was a conscious decision that you made, and the consequences were obvious, and yet you made it. in favor, and often in favor of yourselves or in favor of making money to the detriment of your users. And I have a problem with that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. So it's not a lot different than when we were younger and you'd go into the closet with a 50-foot cord line and talk to your girlfriend or your boyfriend hiding in the closet. The need for communication, that connectivity, it's very powerful. It's a drug almost on people.
Yeah. Well, we've talked plenty of times here. Peter Cohen notably talks about the dopamine hit you get from, every like on Facebook. That somebody liked it. That's good. That's what you're looking for. So yeah, no easy answers here, I don't think, especially as the social norms change, and the younger generations seem to be, at least at that age right now where they are, a lot less concerned with privacy than maybe some of us who have been around the sun a few more times.
Well, in Europe, things are clamping down pretty heavily to almost to extreme. There's a new copyright law that our writer Charlotte Henry has been keeping us apprised of. And it proposes a link tax, where every time you link to somebody, if I understand it right, and a writing, if you link to somewhere else, you have to pay them a tax as a copyright payment. That would cripple the internet, and yet it seems to be going forward in Europe. So yeah. I think the era of, I think there may be some backlash against the current politics of the world, where we're not seeing governments. I know you don't want to talk about politics very much, but because we're not seeing governments taking care of us, I think there's more motivation to clamp down on technical companies to push that. So maybe there's a cultural effect going on that'll lead to partial solution to these problems.
Well, unfortunately, some of our elected leaders, and I count that in the U.S. and the U.K. and France and, every country in the world, that they are not necessarily as tech savvy as maybe they should be to make some of those decisions. And some of them have really great advisors to rely on.
Yeah, staffers, advisors, and committees and advisory groups are ready and willing to advise the staffers of Congress. The problem is that technical recommendations are easy to come by and pretty obvious sometimes. If you do your research, you can come up with great technical recommendations. But by the time they percolate to the top, to the congressman or the senator, they become politically difficult.
Yeah, they've been filtered through the agendas of a lot of those groups or agendas of other groups that are talking to the same Congress people. And there you go.
Okay, let's get off politics.
Yeah, you're right. You're right. Okay, so in your opinion, do you think we are in a post-anything era? Are we post-Mac? Are we post-iPhone? Like so many of the pundits out there seem to be using those kind of phrases as clickbait, or sometimes as honestly some good thought-provoking questions. But do you think we're in a post-anything era?
No, things continuing to evolve. I can think of a couple instances that would weigh against that. First of all, I read Mark Gurman's article at Bloomberg yesterday, I think, about the merging of iOS apps and Mac apps, and how in a few years you're probably going to have a Mac with the A-series ARM processors in there, and you'll be able to run iOS apps on your Mac. And the horsepower of these A-series is just going to keep making the Macs more and more accessible, and the iPad doesn't solve the problem of the big screens. I've written about a 30-inch iPad, and then when Microsoft came out with the Surface Studio, the big, beautiful 28 or 30-inch iPad-like device running Surface, I got really excited about that. But Apple doesn't seem to be going in that direction, and as long as they're continuing to advance the state of the art in MacBooks Pros and in displays, and they're working really hard on a 2019 Mac Pro for engineering and technical and creative professionals. I think we're going to have a Mac for a long, long time. In terms of the phone, we've been reading in the last few days about a reorganization, restructuring Apple that, according to rumors, is designed to sort of prepare Apple for the post-iPhone era. I think that's just a tag or label. There may be a slowdown in the rate at which people buy iPhones. You can't buy $1,000 iPhone every year unless you're a really well-paid technical journalist. So I'm not one of them. But the slowdown in the rate of purchase of phones doesn't mean that we're in a post-iPhone era. It just means the phone is going to continue to evolve. It's going to get lighter and thinner. It's going to look like the things we've seen in science fiction where it's just a slab of glass. It's going to have great 5G connectivity. It's going to have virtual reality. The phone will continue to the point where we no longer need to hold the phone in our hands. Eventually, the phone will disappear into something like a comm badge where we wear it around our neck. And we'll have contact lenses that display the information, or AR glasses that aren't goggles, but I'm wearing a pair of computer glasses right here. These are progressives, and they weigh less than an ounce. And I can easily see, and so they're not objectionable at all to me in terms of weight. I can see something like AR being folded into that and be my display. So eventually the little 6.5-inch display, the phone's going to go away, and we're going to have information floating in front of us like Google Glass, but not as creepy and not as heavy. So it'll still be called an iPhone until it's not. But this business of being connected to the internet in a visual way with supercomputing hardware attached to us somewhere in our body, we got to get away from walking around like this, though.
Well, but that's, I listen to all the discussion of AR, and it sounds great, and there certainly is an absolute place for it. But I know that if I'm answering emails or if I'm surfing the web on my phone, that's quite a bit different, at least in my vision of AR. I mean, I envision AR as, okay, I'm walking down the street, and God knows the marketers are going to do it. That something's going to pop out at me that, okay, this restaurant has hamburgers on sale for half price, or that this clothing store is having a huge sale, or just got a new shipment of something in, as opposed to a way to. AR is augmented reality versus consumption of information. And that's one reason I have a hard time buying into that the glasses you just talked about being an honest-to-God replacement for something like my phone or my iPad. I don't know what form it will take, but there has to be something that's a bit more of a focused device.
One of my rules on the iPhone is clamp it down. As soon as there's a new feature that comes out, explore it, learn about it, but turn it off until you've digested it and how it works and what the security aspects of it for. And I've got a very clamped down phone. And so I'll sit while I'm watching TV, and I'll go through the settings, and I'll say, why is that on? And I'll turn off cellular data for things that don't need cellular data. And I'll turn off location services for apps that I don't think need to know where I am. And I'll clamp down my phone pretty completely. And only the stuff that gets through to me is useful to me. And I think if it's an AR device made by Apple, it will have the same thing. If you don't want to be notified, if you don't want to have every Starbucks and restaurant popping up in your visual field, you'll be able to set those preferences. I hope.
But don't you think there will still be a place for? And I agree with you that's what AR should be. But don't you think there will still be a need for some kind of consumption device that, almost by the nature of our lives right now, needs to be mobile? So you'll still be carrying something like an iPhone or iPad.
You'll be carrying some sort of CPU system around with you, but the display will be divorced from the computer. And like I said, it might be in the form of a necklace or a comm badge or a phone you put in your pocket, and it's linked to your display system by some sort of radio waves or some other communication system. But the idea of holding a device in your hand, I think, is a short-term thing. And if you talk about being post-iPhone, in that sense, I think you're right. The days in 10 years, we won't be carrying around a slab and holding it in our hand. We'll be looking at it in our visual field. I mean, even Sony even has a patent on contact lenses that can serve as a display system, although that may not suit everybody. I tried contact lenses years ago. My eyes wouldn't stomach it. It didn't work for me. So,
yeah.
But those days are numbered.
Okay, so the last question, and once again, you kind of stole it from me. I don't know how you're doing this. Because I didn't. Yeah, well, yeah. So I want to bring us back to relatively current news and ask you about Marzipan and the whole concept of having one app for iOS and Mac. Do you buy into that? Do you think that's a good thing?
Great. Well, it raises issues that are secondary that are interesting. I mean, to modify the Xcode development system so that the developer can have a single binary and it will run properly on an iPad or run properly on a Mac with mouse and pointer is easy in principle to do. There's a lot of engineering and software development to make that happen correctly. I think that's great, but secondary issues are more interesting to me. For example, if Apple switches to this kind of system, how will these iOS apps run on an Intel-based Mac? Well, they could run through a Rosetta-like instruction translator that we had before when we switched from PowerPC to Intel. And that would slow down the iOS apps. Or Apple could put an A-series ARM processor in the Mac, because those are getting very powerful. And, they've talked about how the iPhone XS is as fast as a lot of PCs. So there's a lot of power in that little A12 chip, A12, right? So you could do that, and then the ARM processor would be able to run the iOS apps, and then the developers would have to recompile their Intel-based Mac apps for that environment. And in the meantime, there could be a Rosetta-like translator there, in which case the Mac apps would slow down. Some of my readers have suggested, and I don't believe this, that there could be Intel chips and ARM chips in the Macs, and it would use the ARM to run the iOS apps, and it would have the Intel chip running the Mac OS apps. I don't see Apple doing two dual CPUs. And then another issue that crops up is if you do have a Mac with ARM, now you have to figure out how to run Windows apps. And are you going to support virtualization? I've read glimpses of the fact that, even though it may not be in the A12 chip, Apple could include virtualization hardware in future A-series chips, in which case you'd be able to have a virtualization environment and run Windows. Again, you need some sort of instruction translator to run x86 code on an ARM-based Mac. How that's all going to pan out, nobody knows. But I'm not convinced Apple wants to give up the idea of people being able to run Windows on their Macs. I mean, that's important for educators and scientists and business people, everybody. So how they're going to work that out, it would be interesting to see. So Marzipan's great. That's not the problem. The problem is all the trickle-down side technology effects that it incurs.
I appreciate your perspective, because I'm not nearly as technical as you are in some of those areas. And it seems like you're right, with the areas, with the things we see with virtualization now with our Macs, and we've gone through the Rosetta thing. And, Apple's done such a great job of making those transitions and making them borderline seamless that it just feels like, okay, this is just one more of those. And I have a lot of confidence that Apple could do it. I don't think until you started talking about it, I really hadn't considered the aspects of the different chips and what needs to be included to accomplish that.
This is why I think the 2019 Mac Pro has taken so long, because I strongly suspect now that the 2019 Mac Pro will be a cluster. It'll be a machine that has multiple A-series chips in there and sort of operate as a little mini cluster in parallel processing mode. And Apple's got to marry its development system and Marzipan and the tools for developers, and Mac OS has got to be able to run on this machine. There's a lot of engineering to be done. No wonder it's taken all these years for the 2019 Mac Pro to come out. Not that any of us are going to be able to afford it.
Well,
which is why I think the iMac is late too. I think the iMac is going to go A series, and Apple needs to have an alternative, because when they roll out the expensive Mac Pro, maybe $10,000, a lot of developers won't be able to afford one. They've got to be able to do their A series code development on some sort of Mac they can afford, like $2,000 for an iMac. So I've seen some articles that support that theory, that's why we haven't seen a Coffee Lake iMac yet, because it's going to go A series.
Well, and there have been plenty of people that have been on the show that they're complaining about no Mac Pro, no Mac Pro. And at some point, it's like, okay, who really, honest to God, needs a professional level Mac? I mean, right now you've got the iMac Pro, which is, a whole lot of horsepower for a lot of people. You've got the current levels, the 5K iMacs that are very powerful. And at some point, unless you are doing some of that video editing or some photography stuff, what is all this power going to? And that was what I guess that's where I've been thinking the Marzipan makes a certain amount of sense, because you've got a lot of power that most of us can't keep up with, and it's just sitting there idle. And so why wouldn't you do some of this? And again, I'm talking way beyond where I should be, but if the apps can be optimized for one or the other, through different code sets, then why is that such a bad thing, and why are so many people reacting so strongly to it?
Strongly to what?
Marzipan. That you should never have an iOS-based, what is now an iOS-based app running on your Mac, and Mac apps can't possibly function on an iPad or iPhone. And it's like,
I don't see it going the other way. I don't see Mac apps running on iPads. I don't see that happening, because Mac apps are designed to be handled differently with a different user interface framework.
Well, and but would it be beyond the realm of possibility to have two kind of different interfaces? Because we see that now with Mac apps that have gone to iOS, that there are certain interface compromises, if you will.
Yeah.
And maybe if they came back the other way, could there be interface enhancements that are not realistic for an iPad but are very realistic for a Mac?
I don't know about that. My vision of iOS apps running on a Mac has been simply to allow the Mac user great access to the million or so iOS apps that are running in a little window on their desktop. Something they couldn't get before on a Mac. Something the developer thought was not going to be worth doing on a Mac, but when it thought there was a market for the iPad, and they're not going to bother bringing it to the Mac. So now the developer can just use the new Xcode and recompile it and ship out a single binary. And according to Mark Gurman's sources, there's going to be one store instead of two stores. So
that wouldn't necessarily be a bad thing, I don't think.
No, I don't think so either. What I worry about is Mac apps have a tendency to be more traditionally oriented and designed, and not necessarily have nonsense or backdoors that are not in your interest in terms of tracking your location or information about your environment. And the Mac is not as secure as the iOS, but on the other hand, legacy apps don't have that reputation. But as soon as you start running iOS apps on your Mac, you may have opened a door to malware and badly behaved, not malware, but badly behaved iOS apps that are doing things on your Mac that you weren't expecting them to do. So you gleefully go to the store and you download all these little iOS apps, and they're running, and they're doing their thing, and they're free. So again, like Facebook, their business model is selling information in the background. So I worry about that.
That never happens, John.
Now, I think Mac users are smart enough to know which apps are trustworthy. I don't think you're going to see Mac owners going crazy downloading thousands of iOS apps. I don't think it's going to be that big a deal. I think they're going to be downloading maybe 10 of the ones that they desperately need and like and want. Solves a big problem for Apple and solves a problem for developers.
Yeah. I mean, there's so many different aspects to the discussion, and some you brought up here that I hadn't thought about, and others that are just going to have to play out. I mean, because Apple, with Apple's position on privacy, they're going to have to address some of those things in a bit different fashion for Marzipan.
Yeah, I think Apple will do it.
I can't think of another company that has a better chance of doing it. I'll tell you that.
When I read an article the other day about how there's so much on Apple's plate with all this happening, that I'm not surprised that they've got to struggle with the rollout of the machines. When does the MacBook Pro go A series? Does it at all? Are there going to be Macs that stay with Intel, and they're going to be Macs that stay with A series ARM? Or are they going to do it across the line? When are they going to roll them out? How are they going to keep certain products from cannibalizing each other? How are they going to engineer the Marzipan to make sure it's seamless, as you said? There's a whole lot of stuff happening. WWDC this year is going to be very interesting. But to just simply sit back and say Apple's dropping the ball, I don't think so. I think there's a whole lot of work cut out for them.
Well, it's so that's the thing, and that's a whole other show that we'll have to do sometime. Is the amount of criticism, the way Apple's criticized, and it's natural that the number one, the guy at the top of the heap, is going to be the one that draws the criticism. But sometimes some of these folks that are criticizing Apple are so simplistic. Mm-hmm. And by the way, when was the last time they built a multi-billion-dollar company, a trillion-dollar company? So.
They just know they need a new MacBook Pro and they want it now, and they don't want to wait.
Yeah. Or they need people to read an article that really has little basis in fact. It's just they're grousing. John, this has been a lot of fun. We got to do this more often. Because I feel like I've gotten inside your head a little bit to places I wanted to go, and there's a lot going on in there.
Oh, it hurts already. Oh, yeah, this was fun. Thanks.
Yeah. So make sure that.
Great question.
Thank you. So make sure folks know where they can find you when you're not here having your brain picked.
I'm senior editor at the Mac Observer, www.macobserver.com.
Don't forget Background Mode.
Yeah, that's my podcast that I do, and it's every Monday. I have a up close and one-on-one interview with a technical luminary in the world. A scientist, a writer, journalist, engineer, CEO, former Apple employee, other podcasters like Dr. Kiki Sanford, who does This Week in Science. She's a popular guest. So come by every Monday at the Mac Observer and you'll see my podcast, Background Mode.
And folks, if you aren't reading John's articles, you are missing out on some of the best thinking out there on the tech web. I really mean that. And this, I hope this interview gives you just a small idea of what I'm talking about, and we'll send you to some of John's work.
Great.
John, again, it's a real pleasure. Thank you so much for the time.
It's been my pleasure to be on the show. Thank you. And we got through it. The questions weren't scary at all. They were insightful and fun, and I had a chance to pontificate. So
yeah. Well, we will do it again.
All right, great.
Folks, I'm Chuck Joyner. This is Mac Voices. I hope you got something out of this. I know John's given me a few things to think about that I really didn't see coming. And so now I just got to think about it and process it. And he may have changed my mind on a couple things. Until the next time, and as always, thanks for watching. Visit MacVoices.com for show notes and to connect with Chuck on social media. Get involved in our Mac Voices Facebook group and get more out of your Apple tech with Mac Voices magazine, free on Flipboard. And if you find value in it all, consider supporting us at patreon.com/MacVoices and join these folks who help keep Mac Voices coming to you. Advertising handled by Backbeat Media at backbeatmedia.com. Bandwidth provided by CacheFly at cachefly.com.